you're equating enough as a transaction. How much do I need to achieve to feel like I'm enough? How many things do I need to do? How much more beautiful can I be before I'm considered enough, before I can love myself, before I'm acceptable? But here is the thing. Loving yourself isn't a transaction. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lead from Love podcast. I am Yalini. I am your host and love coach. Now, today's episode, we are talking about how to fall in love with yourself. And it's perfect timing with Valentine's Day here. And the reason I am so excited about this episode is because we are debunking the myths around self-love. Because self-love is not about how you look. It is not about what you are wearing. And it is not about what you have accomplished in this life. It is something completely different. And we are going to talk about what it really is in this episode. And to talk about self-love and to talk about how to fall in love with yourself, I have my good friend Sammy Kennedy here joining us. And Sammy is incredible. She has been in the beauty industry for the last 6 years, and she's been an influencer, a model. She's competed in Miss Universe. She's helped run the Mrs. Australia International Beauty Pageant, and she works as a business coach for beauty salons all around Australia. So she knows beauty. She knows what people think it is and the ideas of self-love around that space. And so she is so well versed in this space. I'm so excited to have her on because she is testament to why beauty is not skin deep. So thank you so much for joining us, Sammy.
Thank you so much for that intro, Yeleni. I honestly feel hyped up right now, and I just am sitting there taking it all in. And the fact that we're talking about self-love and I'm sitting here going, whoa, that is a lot. I kind of feel uncomfortable. This is probably the perfect topic for us to dive in deep together with.
Oh, because, if you are listening to the audio and you can't see what Sammy looks like, go ahead and check out the YouTube that's been uploaded, because Sammy is absolutely stunning, not just physically beautiful, but she's intelligent and she's fun and she's funny. And the reason I really wanted to have her on this episode is because if you look at her, she is what most people would think is the epitome of beauty, but also someone who would just, how could you not love yourself? How could you not love yourself when you look this good and you're this accomplished and you've achieved so much and you have a great personality? But Sammy has had her own journey in this world, and I really wanted her to be able to share her story with you because I think it's something that so many of us as women can relate to. If you're open to it, I would love for you to share with us just some of the things that you've gone through as a woman in this world through the beauty industry and the things that you've experienced.
Thank you so much for inviting me to have this opportunity to talk about it. Obviously, it does require me to be quite vulnerable, and I know that everyone has their own insecurities and judgments. And from the outside looking in, a lot of people will look at my life and make assumptions, but to really peel back all the layers of the onion and see what I've dealt with, I've definitely had a lot of underlying lack of self-love. And it started from a young age. I used to do modeling, and I grew up in a small country town. For those of you who may know, Albany, WA is where I was born. And well, I wasn't born in Albany, I was born in Perth, moved there from the age of 2. And I was there up until I was 17. Now, modeling was one thing that people would judge me for. Who do you think you are? You think you're so good. And I never thought that at all. I just loved the feeling of confidence and getting in front of the camera and helping bring photographers' creative vision to life. And one thing I noticed is when I was getting deeper into modeling, I was always told, you're not tall enough. You have to be 175 centimeters tall to be able to walk runway. And I was only 160. And then as I progressed and got older for more modeling campaigns, they would ask me, oh, we're looking for a model. I'd give them my details. And then they say, oh, actually, we're looking for someone who's blonde. You're not blonde enough. So I looking back now, I didn't realize at the time, but I would always change myself to try fit in and fit the stereotype and people please. And what happened is I dyed my hair blonde, and I was blonde for 5 years. You know, I would always work harder. I remember at school, I wasn't going to get the ATAR score. I wanted to go and study physio. So, you know, your score's not enough. And this constant reminder of never being enough, honestly, I don't realize until becoming an adult and looking back at how much of an impact that had on me. Because as I've grown, as I progressed, as I've faced all these different opportunities, challenges, everything in life, I've told myself that I'm never enough. And by never being enough, I always was seeking more. I had to be more. I had to do more. And I used to wear it like a badge of honor, that I could outperform anyone, that I could achieve more than anyone. And, you know, being my age, I'm 21, I've had imposter syndrome my whole life because people look at my age and what I've achieved and they, you know, they say, you're so young. You're such a baby. I always get told that. And I understand it's just like, oh, wow. You know, maybe to an extent they're amazed or they're inspired, but to always be told that, it's like, I'm not old enough, you know, to be able to achieve these things or to be able to be happy. And a lot of it is probably, and I know, self-limiting beliefs and stories that I've made up, but also hearing it over and over again, it didn't help me try break that thought pattern. And so I did compete in Miss Universe Australia, and I was definitely one of the shorter ones in there, which is just once again reinforcing that I'm not tall enough. But I just remember that it was like you had to have more followers, you had to do these things, you had to people please, and it was just not me. And then later on, I went on to go, I didn't really like the way that pageant was run, and I want to create a better version. And I got presented with the opportunity to run a beauty pageant with another lady. And we had this incredible team. We put this pageant together, and instead of it just being a beauty pageant, it was beauty and brains. It was empowering women through education and personal development and entrepreneurship, which is something that I really stood for. I didn't want it to just be about beauty. I didn't want it to be all smoke and mirrors and how you look. I wanted it to be about actually empowering women, giving them success, giving them strategy. And even then, as an organizer for this pageant, I would get sponsors coming up to me, and it was just oh, you're so beautiful, you know, like, you know, kind of just like this feeling that life must be so easy for me just because I'm pretty. And I remember specifically, I won't name names, but I just remember getting told, Sammy, you're the full package. You're beautiful, you're funny, you're intelligent, but you should just get your boobs done. Like, you need bigger boobs. And I just remember sitting with that and thinking, what the hell?
I'm really curious because that's a shocking thing to be told, especially because what I'm hearing is you are someone who is naturally beautiful. And yet when you're younger, at every point that you turn, it's like something has to be diminished from who you are. It's, you're beautiful, but you're not the right height, or you're not blonde enough. And then you get into the pageantry business and all of a sudden you're the full package and there's a different but. And now you need different size boobs. Or, I mean, how did you react to that? Did that ever affect you and make you question, well, do I?
Oh, 100%. You know, I'm half Asian, half Australian. I know that my mum doesn't have big boobs. I know my grandma doesn't. And if you already got that level of insecurity because of societal expectations, I started to realize that if I have bigger boobs, it's not going to change who I am as a person. Like, I know some people that go and get it and maybe they do get more confidence, or they, you know, feel happier, whatever it is. But for me, that would actually mean that I don't accept myself when I hate myself that much that I have to people please and change who I am just to impress others. And I wouldn't have been doing it for me. Now, I have nothing against people that get it done. Do not get me wrong, and do not get this confused, because there's a difference between doing things to please others and to make sure that you're this perfect picture that they have of you. rather than doing it for your own fulfillment or your own self-love reasons. But the biggest thing that got me is like, yeah, if I get my boobs done, like, is it going to get me anywhere further in life? You know, is it going to change who I am? And it's taking away a part of me. And I think that's the scariest thing, is when you get caught up in these worlds of modeling and pageantry, even the beauty industry, it's all smoke and mirrors. You know, everyone looks so beautiful. Everyone thinks that you need to have your lips done and your boobs done and your nose done. And it's like, no one is here to accept the rawest version of themselves. And if you look at me on this YouTube video right now, or if you ever see it, you can see I'm not wearing any makeup. Like, I get my lashes done, I'll admit that, but my tan's natural, my hair, like, I am so big on being natural, because even when I have makeup on, people are like, not even accepting of that. Like, you should be happy within yourself. You do. And then they tell you to wear makeup. It's just the most conflicting crap that you hear in the beauty industry that just makes you question yourself.
Okay, I'm just taking a pause that you're not wearing makeup, because I'm going to be honest, I am. And, you know, when I'm at home, my friends, people that are close to me, they'll see me with the full, awful, whatever raw version of me there is. But when I'm out in public, I like to have makeup on. And it's not necessarily an insecurity thing. It's like, it's how I like to present myself. And I love that we're presenting a contrast now, because either way, when is it enough? If you're wearing makeup, you're not accepting yourself. If you don't wear makeup, you're not loving yourself.
But if I'm to add on to why I don't wear makeup, the why is my own personal story. It's this story I tell myself that if I wear makeup, I'm not real. People are going to judge me. And that's not necessarily the truth in the world. It's just how I've been treated in the past, of like, who are you trying to be when I was younger, wearing makeup, doing modeling. It's like you're trying to be older than you are, or it's like you're trying to be this person. So then I'm like, well, I can't do that. I have to be the raw, real version of me for people to see me for me. Otherwise, they're going to have this false thing. And it's all in my head. I know that.
That's an amazing story, though, because it sounds like that's been the repercussion or the consequence of all the things that you've gone through. And even sharing the story around, oh, Sammy, you're the whole package, but you just need bigger boobs. What I loved about that story is, yes, obviously it had an impact on you. I mean, for me, I would imagine that would be so shocking to have someone say that to you. But you actually had the ability to stop and run that picture through. And instead of stopping where I think most women would and go, oh, now I'm feeling really insecure. Maybe I do need to do this. Maybe that will make me be better or more beautiful or more lovable. It's amazing that you had the ability to actually step back from the criticism or the feedback people were giving you to actually reflect and go, will I gain anything from having a boob job? Will that make me feel better? Will that add to my life? Will that enhance it in any way? Instead of just listening to their belief system around what beauty is and around what you need. And that takes something for a person to be able to actually understand who they are and meet their needs before listening to everything else. Because especially in this world that's with social media, with marketing, women especially are constantly bombarded by information that tells them how they need to look, how they need to dress, how they need to do their makeup, what surgeries they need or what fillers they need, and how they need to smell. I mean, it is unbelievably frustrating and exhausting to actually go, hey, no, this is who I am. This is how I'm going to show up. And I don't care what anyone else thinks. But to get there, most of us have normally had to make a lot of mistakes. Most of us have often gone down the wrong path and chased the wrong beliefs based on what everyone else told us we need to be. And I'm curious if you're open to sharing, what has your experience been in that space? What paths have you gone down to feel like you were lovable, to feel like you were enough? Because I feel like the reason I'm asking you this is because I want people to know that they're not alone in the choices or, you know, I use the word loosely, mistakes, but it's just all part of the learning and part of life.
Honestly, I think the biggest one for me is, if you know me, if you've seen my journey, I have been involved in a lot of businesses. So from the age of 10, I've been in 7 different family owned and operated businesses, from bowling alleys to go-karting, rodeo. I ran my own music festival last year. I ran a beauty pageant. Like, if you're not listening to all these things and thinking, who is she? She's crazy. Like, how do you even have the time? Then I think that's one of the biggest signs that I was doing all these things. And I thought that the bigger, the better, the greater the achievement, I'll be happy when I achieve this. And I'll love myself even more when I reach that milestone. And so my life was just comprised of milestones and goals and bigger, I guess, opportunities to go chase.
And is that to do with the story of who do you think you are? Because I remember earlier on when you were sharing your story around doing modeling, and a lot of the feedback or the beliefs that you heard were, who do you think you are? You know, it must be superficial. And was this a way for you to prove yourself?
Absolutely. I think there was this level of insecurity that how could I be, as young as I am, being a business coach? So I over did everything else. So I would be overstepping in business in terms of chasing other opportunities, because I believed that the more proof I had, the more people would believe me.
Because you couldn't just be legitimate in and of yourself and who you are.
I didn't believe in myself enough, no. And so I did more and more, and I went on and did these things. I remember while we were running the pageant in my own business, I was hitting 15 to 20K months, which for anyone would be quite a significant achievement, I would say.
Yeah, that's huge.
And I was the unhappiest I've ever been. You know, I thought that making that money and having the impact and helping those people, like at that stage, I wasn't even sure what I was doing. I knew that from the outside looking in, I was successful, and I still have it all the time. Wow, you're doing so well. Like, what have you been up to? And on the inside, I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of having like a mini life crisis. Like, I don't know if I should keep traveling and working or do this. And, you know, this need for self-love and self-acceptance really became clear to me when I went through a breakup. And I had the most beautiful relationship. Like, I fell in love with this guy, and we had the most beautiful connection and bond, and he really understood me. And I ultimately stuffed it all up because I lost my levels of self-worth. And I was trying to mask it in business achievements, and I would travel off to the other side of Australia and I'd keep working. And I thought that, you know, doing all these things was going to fill my cup up and make me feel better, but I just kept draining it. And the more empty and empty I became, the more I would look at him and think that you're not enough and you're not doing enough. And I was projecting all of my own insecurities and my own issues into the relationship. And even to this day, I feel like a bit of the guilt still lives with me, and I've had to really like accept that. But coming back to Yeleni and I being friends, we do accountability sessions and we talk to each other about business, but we also talk about what's going on in our personal lives, because that does seep into the way you show up in your business. And I felt so awkward and uncomfortable just coming straight into the conversation and saying, I don't love myself. I don't know where I've gone wrong. And I definitely can't love someone else if I don't love myself. I definitely can't be helping other people if I can't help myself. And it doesn't matter how much I try and mask it with business or going to the gym or, you know, trying to just, I don't know, I would just do anything to kind of escape, to not face what I really was struggling with. And it's only until now, like looking in, I needed to find that acceptance. And I remember sitting there and I had grasped that I had all the self-awareness in the world, that I'm the issue here and I don't have enough self-love and trust. And it weighed heavy on me, man. I did not feel comfortable realizing that I was the problem and that I was enough. And I didn't want to go blame everything and everyone else, because I knew it was within me. But little did I know that self-awareness is not the solution. it's the starting point. And so I had all of this knowledge of, okay, where does it start? I even called up my dad and I was talking to him, and he said, yeah, I remember when you were young and you said to me, Dad, it's like, no matter whatever I do, you're never proud of me. And he said, and that weighed in on me. And that was something that I will always remember. And, you know, when I was younger, I was a bit of a rebel. I was partying and doing all the things you probably shouldn't do and not listening to your parents. I'm the firstborn child, so I'm the man of the house, as the memes suggest. But I think for me, I got really lost. And if you ever look at childhood trauma or where the root is or where it stems from, without me realizing and Dad bringing that up to me, that's where it all started. And so this need for validation, that root just kept growing and growing, and I just kept finding ways to keep adding to it. And yeah, I've come to this stage in my life when how much is too much? How much can you just let yourself be a massive people pleaser or people walk over you? And I always say to my clients, because I'm a beauty salon coach, you know, if you don't want people to no-show you or reschedule last minute or cancel their appointments, like, you need to lead and show the self-respect you have for yourself by enforcing your policies, and not just going, oh, no, it's okay. Like, oh, yeah, I'll just do this for you. Because the more you bend over backwards for others, they cross that boundary and then they continue to do that because, you know, there were no repercussions. It's okay.
Yeah. And there's no boundaries, there's no self-value. And I love what you touched on there, but I would also modify one thing slightly where you made the statement of how much is too much. I would also add how much is enough.
Yeah.
Right. Because, you know, when you were wanting to be enough, when you were wanting to prove yourself and launching yourself into 7 different family businesses, I mean, that I do one and that's enough for me. I can't even imagine 7 different things on your plate. But what is that end goal? What does that look like when it looks like enough? And I want to highlight that because so many of us are pushing ourselves and chasing a dream or an idea of, once I reach this, then I'll feel good. Then I'll feel better. Then I'll be happy. Then I'll feel enough. Then everything will be okay in my life. But often we reach that milestone. You were doing what, 15, 20K months, and you still feel flat inside. And so then you create the next goal and the next goal. And I mean, gosh, there were so many things that you touched on that I wish I could explore all of them. But just quickly, another element of what you shared, which is so profound and takes so much courage to even say, is the impact it had in your relationship. And most of us, we're not happy with our partners. We play the blame game. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. He never shows up. He's not good enough. He doesn't listen to me. Whatever those stories are. And sure, maybe they're not showing up in the ideal way, but often we're not showing up in the ideal way either. And that has an impact on the relationship, on the interaction with the other person. And to actually sit there and go, actually, maybe it's me. And maybe it's my stuff. And on top of that, being willing to have the conversation with your dad and go all the way back to your childhood of nothing I do is ever enough, because that's often where it comes from. These aren't stories that we pick up later in our years. It's stuff that came out through the dynamics of our families and whether we felt loved, whether we felt supported, whether we felt we were accepted for who we are. And then it goes through marketing and social media and the greater community, and everything else just bombards it, right? So you grow up feeling like you're not enough and nothing you do is enough. And then you launch yourself into all of these businesses and you're burning yourself out and you're still feeling empty inside. And then it leaches into your relationships. And you sit there at the end of it going, what's it all for?
100%. And that's something you asked me. You said, what is enough? When is enough? And I could not come up with an answer because I had never even considered that or thought that. And then I started to ponder the question of, when will I be satisfied with what I'm achieving? when will I be satisfied in my current relationships, like not necessarily romantically, but friendships? Like, when will I be satisfied in my own personal development, my growth, my gym results? It goes into every aspect of your life.
And here's the thing, life is a perpetual journey. That self-growth, that accomplishment, that should always be continuous. There is no end point. So having to get to the point of being enough, it's like saying you're not going to be happy until you get to your deathbed, because that's the actual end point, right? It's crazy. But also what I'm hearing is you're equating enough as a transaction. How much do I need to achieve to feel like I'm enough? How many things do I need to do? How much more beautiful can I be before I'm considered enough, before I can love myself, before I'm acceptable? But here is the thing. Loving yourself isn't a transaction, and it's not supposed to be conditional, because a lot of what we've talked about is we've talked about beauty, we've talked about work, we've talked about accomplishments. Self-love and loving yourself, it's not wrapped up in that. It's wrapped up in your beingness. And here's the thing that is so difficult for so many women to accept: that you are lovable simply for the fact that you exist. And here's why I say that. When you came into this world, you likely came in kicking and screaming, right? You didn't care if your mum was or your parent was sleep deprived. If you were hungry, you made sure they knew it. And you didn't care if they were grumpy. You're like, I'm going to keep crying until I get my needs met. And if they get it wrong and they change your nappy, but it's not your nappy that needs to be changed, or they try and burp you, but it's not burping that you need, you just keep making a fuss. You didn't sit there and go, I'm annoying them, I'm being a pain, maybe I should be quiet now. You just went, no, I need my needs met. And you expect it. And what that means is you came into this world expecting to be loved, not because you had to do anything to earn it, not because you had to do something in exchange, not because it was based on you had to be a cute baby or you wouldn't be lovable. It's just simply because you came into existence. And then somewhere along the way, through culture, through learned behavior, through schools, through family, whatever it is, we learned that we have to earn love. We have to do something to become lovable. And what I want you to know is that is a complete lie, because just as you came into this world being worthy of love, that has never changed. It's just the story that went with it got blurred. Because loving yourself is learning to understand who you are. It is a relationship, just like every other relationship, just like Sammy's relationship with that previous partner. You're going to have tough days in a relationship. It's not all going to be walks in the parks and smelling roses every day. You're going to have a roller coaster ride. And that relationship with yourself is the same. You are going to have ups and downs. And saying like for me, to say I love myself doesn't mean that I think I'm the bee's knees every single moment of every single day. But it's about going, it's okay. I'm all right. If there are things I want to accomplish, I can accomplish it. But it doesn't mean that I'm insignificant or I am nothing in the moments that I am not doing all the things that I want to do. It just means that I'm human, and I'm okay with that. I'm willing to love myself through it, because just as you would love your friend on their down days, you're also allowed to love yourself on your own down days. And that doesn't mean giving up. That doesn't mean you could just throw the towel in and, that's it. You're done. It can get better. But what I see self-love as is about understanding your values, about understanding your desires, who you are, understanding your quirks, the things that make you different, because who wants to be the same as everybody else? Right? Because we see images in the media around how beauty is about having certain size lips, or not having any frown lines, or having a certain shape and having a really toned butt. But actually, maybe the freckles on your face that you think are too much are actually the thing that make you unique, and that is part of your beauty, right? Or your funny sense of humor, whatever it is. those quirks are what make you the individual that you are in this world, that separates you from everyone else. That is a beautiful thing. And if we could be willing to look at that with kindness, that is the journey to falling in love with yourself. Because you're not here to be like everybody else. You're not here to look like them, to sound like them, and to do all of the same things as the next person. And if you're willing to develop a relationship with who you are, because it doesn't happen overnight, it's a journey, but that's when you understand what makes your personality so unique and what you are here to accomplish, or who you are simply here to be in this life, then that is where you get to really come into your own and be less affected by the noise of the outside world that will constantly, if you let it, constantly push you down, constantly make you feel like you are not enough, and constantly make you question your worth in this world.
I love it. And I truly believe in what you were saying. However, at the time that I was in the thick of it, I would have listened to that and think, what a load of crap. And the ego, right? That's you just saying, no, I know better and all of those things. But when you're able to take the emotions out of it sometimes and look logically at, like, if there was a problem in life, you know, would I just keep beating it down or would I find a solution? And I think that's, you got to stop beating yourself down and like get help. And it doesn't mean I have to go to a psychologist or I have to go to like this meeting, you know, hey, I'm Sammy and I don't love myself. But it's more, maybe it's just having that conversation with a friend or having someone be able to question you on the things you're saying. And that's what Yalini did to me. It just made me rethink how I was speaking to myself, what my beliefs were, how I was treating myself, and to get asked questions like, what are you proud of? You strip back the business, you strip back, you know, the beauty and everything. Like, if we tear all those layers away and like, who is Sammy? And I was like, oh, okay, who am I? Yeah, I'm musical, I'm funny, you know, like all those other parts about me was like what I needed to embody and embrace and not kind of mask. And something I wanted to touch on before was, I do speak about the 15 to 20K months and thinking like that was going to be the bee's knees. I was most stressed. I was 49 kilos, drinking 5 coffees a day, working 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., like barely eating because I was constantly driving and meetings and working. And when I went through this breakup, I went through a kind of fight or flight mode, and I decided I don't want to be in Perth. I actually ran away, and I'll be the first to admit, like, yeah, I ran away. I went to a different country and I actually spent time journaling. I thought journaling was the most stupid thing ever. I could never do it. I told myself that. And through journaling, I got so much clarity and I started showing a lot more gratitude for things in life. And then I started to see my strengths and I started to see who is Sammy? Like, who do I want to show up as? You know, maybe you have this version of yourself that you've beat down so much and you don't believe is enough. But if you were to look at yourself and see this highest version of yourself, who would she be? How would she speak to herself? How would she show up? And I think when I started being able to map that person out and then embodying that, that's when I really saw the results. And from those big months and being unhappy, after I came out of this traveling journey of self-rediscovery and all of that, I actually came back to Perth and I had COVID in Bali and decided I missed my flight. I'm going to come home and just focus on myself and my business. I had some of my lowest months in business, like 3 to 5K months, and I'm just scraping by, covering my overheads and everything like that in my personal life. And the fact that I could wake up at whatever time I wanted, I wake up at 4:30 by choice. Go to the gym, go do a workout, sit at my local coffee shop, have a coffee, journal, and then work. I started working less. I was only working 7 a.m. to about 11. Then I have like a break. I go for a walk. I go down to the beach, and then I come back and do maybe 2 more hours in the afternoon. And I started stripping back where I was always overcompensating. And when I stripped back that overcompensation, I actually realized that everything I needed was enough. I realized that all these fancy things that everyone looks up to, yes, Yeleni and I are different, right? Yeleni loves luxury and feeling, and I'm in the luxury market. I put protective film on luxury watches, and I've been in it a lot. And I love that Yeleni is someone who does it because of how it makes her feel, and because it's a part of her. It's like a personal brand. I love it.
Yeah, it's not superficial.
It's not superficial. Yeah. And being in the beauty industry for as long as I have, and then also being in the watch world, a lot of the people you do meet, it's for status and it's for validation and all of those things. And I've started to realize that everything I have right now in my life, I'm happy with. And when I started to realize that, and I started to find that gratitude and self-love, that's when I started showing up better in business. If you've been following my business page, you would see I'm just putting value out there. I want to help people. I don't even care if I don't get paid at this stage, because I just want to be of service. And I couldn't do that before. If I don't love myself, if I'm not happy with who I am, there's no way I can give to others. And it's this fine balance, I will say, of not pouring out to everyone else before yourself, but it's like refilling your cup and keeping it full, but also be overflowing so you can share that with others.
Yeah. I love that, because we can only love someone else to the capacity that we're willing to love ourselves. And that can be a really hard pill to swallow sometimes. But what the story that you shared highlights that before, you thought you had to do everything to be enough, to be lovable, to be accepted. And actually, by doing less, and even if that meant earning less money and just scraping by, you were happier for it, because you had the life or the lifestyle that you wanted, but you were also more accepting of yourself. There wasn't that self-judgment and criticism in the same way that it existed before. And the way that you got there, I just love this so much, because, it can be so easy to go, okay, great. So I need to love myself and I need to accept myself. But how do I start? What do I do? And a lot of the conversations that we have, they're in our head. And then when we're reflecting, they're all in our head. And so 2 things that you touched on that are amazing that I really want to highlight is, one, you can speak to someone else, because often no one is as harsh a critic of you than you. And so sometimes speaking to a friend is important, because it gives you perspective that maybe you're not as dumb as you think. Maybe you're not failing as badly as you thought, that maybe you might actually be kind of amazing. Right? It gets you out of the stories that you're telling yourself. But secondly, you also journaled. And it was, even for you, something that you thought was ridiculous, right? Because often it is. If you've never journaled before, it's so easy to look at that and go, I don't need to journal. I have the thoughts in my head. I've already gone through all the processes. What more could I possibly gain from journaling? But there is a process of touching pen to paper that creates a flow of energy through your body, and it becomes an outlet for things to appear in a way that perhaps you didn't, whether that provides you with clarity and insight or just a release. And so that journaling process, as I understand it with you, was actually able to support you to reconnect with yourself, and that you have accomplished things, that you are enough, that maybe you're chasing things that aren't that important.
I also have to add on something that was a game changer for me, and I'm not expecting everyone else to go and do this, but seriously, you look at social media, I use it as a business tool, but if you look at it in your personal life, it's just a platform that sucks all your time and energy away and gets you into this mindset of comparing, and you're valuing your success, your self-worth, how hot you are, how funny you are with everyone else because they're just posting this picture perfect content. And in a previous life, I did do the Miss Universe, I did do the influencer life, and it was the most unfulfilled and least self-loving I've ever been in, because I'm constantly looking at how many likes I get to see if I can land the next brand deal. I'm constantly having to make sure X amount of people use my discount code so I can get paid. So then I've got to make sure I look the best and I'm showing up the best. And it's the biggest energy drain of my life. So as a commitment to myself, over the last couple of weeks, I made the decision to deactivate my personal Instagram account. And I didn't realize how many people are actually sitting there watching and looking and keeping up to date with your life. And I realized that there is so much power and peace in privacy. And when I realized that, and I wasn't looking for the external validation, and I found myself of like confidence in who I am, I don't care what other people think of me. I don't care if someone listens to this podcast and think what a load of crap, or they look at me and go, oh my gosh, she's amazing. Like, I am so content with who I am and what I'm doing now that I don't need social media to tell me how successful I am or other people. And I love sharing what's actually going on in my life with the people that I care about.
Which is how it used to be before social media. That was the life that I grew up with. So it's still something I'm adapting. But thank you for bringing up social media, because so many of us have wrapped up our self-worth and self-love with how many likes we get, how many followers we have, or how many comments we receive that are positive, and constantly depending on someone else to validate you or to like you is a losing battle. Because here's the truth. You can't be liked by everyone. You just can't. We're not here to be loved by everyone. There's a quote that I love that's something along the lines of, you can be the ripest, juiciest peach in the world, and still there'll be people who hate peaches. And there's nothing you need to do to change yourself. You're the ripest, juiciest peach, but you're just not here to be everyone's cup of tea, because we're all here to be different, which means we need to connect with different personalities, right? And so sometimes actually having a digital detox is important for your self-care and your ability to love yourself, because it bombards your senses and it can make you lose sight of what's real. And so
noise, hey, you need to stop looking at what everyone else is doing, thinking that that's what you got to do, how you have to act, how you have to be. If you get rid of that and just be you again, you'll start to find yourself. But if you never have a break, you never actually give yourself the space to feel, to find yourself and to heal.
Oh, that is so beautiful, to feel, because social media, it keeps you in your head and it keeps you desensitized often. And it's just constant stimuli going through your senses. And you haven't got enough time to actually fully process it or to understand it. And it's often one-sided. Not everyone posts the other side of life when they're feeling down, when they're feeling like, when they're questioning themselves, when they don't think like anything's worth it. And so having time away from it gives you, one, an opportunity to reconnect with reality, but also, two, it helps you understand what's actually real, what actually matters in life. Because often with social media world, it's a facade. We're posting things or doing things that we think is going to get the clicks, that we think are going to get the likes. And you stop living for yourself. You're living for approval.
In the modeling world and also in the influencer world, you might notice that some of these women are beautiful, but they're always half naked. And the more they strip their clothes back, the more likes, the more comments they get. And it's like until they're almost naked and they've given themselves away, every part of them, this vulnerability, I don't know, it's so empty, right? And that's why I stopped posting any kind of content like that, because even though you see the likes go up, you get that adrenaline rush, you feel good for the moment, but then you come crashing back down, and then you're waiting for the next biggest, best photo that's going to attract everyone's attention, and it's not fulfilling. And I also think what was going through my mind as you were saying all those things is, this sounds really grim, but just like they say, you can't take your money to the grave. You can't take your followers to the grave. You can't take your likes and all the comments you get to the grave. If you take those away, who are you as a person?
And who's going to be around you on your deathbed? Because it's not the followers.
Do you want to be remembered for how many followers you had? Do you want to be remembered for that one viral TikTok or reel that went viral? Like, is that what you want to be known for? Or do you want to be known for the person that always had someone's back, or was so true to themselves and sure that it didn't matter what other people said? They just did what they wanted.
Yep,
as long as it's not hurting anyone.
Yeah, but that version of you being true to yourself, that's inspiring for the people around you. The version of you that can make someone laugh when they're crying, that has meaning and impact in a real way in someone's life. The version of you that cares and the version of you that loves, that's real. That's something that has real impact in someone's life. And so if we quit chasing a facade and we come back to earth and we come back to ourselves and we do things like taking a digital detox, connecting in a real way with the people around us, journaling as a way of discovering who we are, taking time to do things like maybe meditate, go for a walk in the park, listen to the music that you like, and do it for you. Don't do it for show. And sit with what emotions come up for you. Because here's the thing, the process of falling in love with yourself, it is not just about loving the parts of you that you like, that are fun, whether that be your sense of humor or your intelligence and your wit or your smile. It's also about loving the parts of you that are a little bit darker, your tears, your anger, your pain, your stories, your frustrations, and going, all of this, the highs, the lows, all of it in its entirety is okay. And it's okay because you are human. You are here to experience it all, because you do not appreciate the highs without some of those lows. And yet it's not great. It's not fun sitting in the discomfort of the pain or the grief. But it's what makes you human. That is an experience that you get to have in this world. And those stories of I'm not enough or I'm not this, I'm that, if you were just willing to sit in it and observe it and feel where that's coming up in your body and acknowledge it and then let it just drift away, it no longer has to have the hold on you that it once had. And so the process of learning to sit with your emotions, not getting caught up in the story, not having to figure it out, but just allowing it to wash over you and wash through you, that can be healing. And that can also be the first step to actually understanding who you are. Because if you've been living your life on social media, if you've been living your life responding to all the criticism that you've ever received and trying to prove yourself constantly, then the likelihood is that you probably don't really know yourself that well, because you've been spending your life people pleasing. So sitting in all of it with yourself, and you don't have to do it all day, every day, we're just taking moments to allow that to be, can also be a way of reconnecting with who you really are and changing the story. Instead of judging yourself for every little thing, finding ways to actually acknowledge yourself with positive feedback and go, I like this about myself. Or, I didn't accomplish 10 things today and that's so bad. And it's like, well, I showed up for one. I showed up for one. Okay, there might be that little critical voice in the back going, but still not good enough. But you go, but at least I showed up for that one thing. And just the conversation that you have little by little, it has the opportunity to change from self-criticism to a little bit of positive reinforcement. Like, I did a good job today. I'm proud of myself. I'm happy that I did this. I'm happy that I showed up. I'm happy that I made the bed today. Right? Or I drank a glass of water.
All of what you're saying, it's just you're missing the word. And I think for anyone listening, if you're missing what Yeleni is saying, it's forgiveness as well. All of those things you're saying, all these tasks and stuff, the cryptic message that I am just hearing right now is forgive yourself. You can't love yourself without learning to forgive all the ugliest and darkest parts. And I'm sorry I cut you off. It was in my head. No, this is literally what one of the biggest game changers was for me. The guilt, the feeling like I'm never enough. Like, I just had to forgive myself. And even though sometimes I sit here and I still feel guilty, or you beat yourself up, like, I could have done this so much differently. I could have been better, but it's just forgiving yourself, because at the time that was the best you could have done.
And I'm curious. So thank you for highlighting that, because absolutely that is a big part of it, because when we're not good enough in ourselves, we're judging ourselves, and it can be hard to forgive ourselves for things that we think are not good enough. So if you are willing to share, what was it that you did that helped you forgive yourself? Because I know that this would be a really big challenge for a lot of people, and I've seen it with clients.
I actually did some money mindset work. I've done about 2 courses now, because I have some deep-rooted issues with money since growing up. And one of the things they get you to do is write out and list all of the things that you don't like, you're unhappy with. It's pretty much just listing out all the trauma, I should say, because literally trauma does not have to be, like, if you know my story, I've been hit by a car. It doesn't have to be that traumatic, but it could be the little things that have just stayed in your head and it just keeps replaying over and over and over.
The stories of not being good enough, or who do you think you are, those sorts of things.
Absolutely. And so by writing them down and clearly identifying them, you have the self-awareness. And then the second step is to write yourself a letter of forgiveness. And when you do that, don't just go, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. Like, actually sit there and think about, what was I going through at the time? Why was I showing up in that way? Or if someone did something to me, what was going on in their life? Because when you actually look at the bigger picture, you might realize they were super stressed out and they were reactive and they were just pushing that on me because they didn't know how to deal with what was going on in their life. Or for me, I had all these pressures of other people's problems getting pushed onto me, and I wasn't in the space to be able to handle my own stuff. So I wasn't looking after myself. And when you can identify what was going on, you start to realize that, hey, it's not as bad as it seems. And then having that forgiveness of, I forgive you, it's okay. And I'm working, I'm aware, like, I'm actually trying to make this better. I'm not just going to keep playing the victim and sit here in my pain. And then the next step after that is rewriting the belief. What was the lesson you learned? How are you going to give this whole situation a more positive and better meaning? And I think that's the thing. A lot of people like myself that sit in this, I don't have enough self-love. You tell yourself stories that I'm not good enough. You sit there without realizing, playing the victim. You judge other people. Like, I don't care what you say, you don't judge other people. I was that person. I don't judge other people. I am judging myself so hard. Of course I'm judging other people, because whatever I see in myself, I see in others. So if I love myself, I'm going to see the best parts and most love in other people. If I hate the way I look, if I hate the way I do this, like, and hate is such a horrible word, you shouldn't be using that with yourself, but a lot of us do. And this is the truth. I could make it all sunshine and rainbows of like, oh yeah, you just do this, but to actually sit in the discomfort, go through that process, and not only do it once, but like reread through it. I never understood affirmations. Once again, I looked at all this stuff and I thought, that's a bit weird, not for me. But the more I start to try it and be open to it, the more I start to see the benefit of it. And so it's not the affirmation of like, I am beautiful. Like, it's not just trying to say empty words. It's that reminder of, this is me rewriting the belief and reinforcing it so that I'm going to show up in that way in the future and not fall back into my old patterns and behaviors.
Yeah. And it's like constant reminder, which is beautiful. So I love you sharing that. Thank you so much. Because the process of forgiving yourself, I want you to also recognize that these are stories that didn't just develop in the last month or year. These are stories that you probably carried since you were a little kid. And so when you're forgiving yourself It's like forgiving that inner child, that little girl inside of you. And if you could imagine that every time you criticize yourself and you judge yourself harshly, you tell yourself you're not good enough, that you were speaking to that little girl and you saw how her face changed, you probably start talking to her a little bit differently, because we all carry that inner child around with us, and they need that forgiveness more than the adult version of us, because every time we judge, we're telling them they're not good enough. And so taking the time to write this letter where you acknowledge the stories that you tell yourself, what was going on when those stories happened and the context around it, where you then get to understand how that's impacted you and you get to turn it around, you're healing that wounded part of you. And as that heals, your capacity to actually receive more love increases with it. Now, we're going to wrap this up because I know that we've been talking for a while. There's so much more that we could go on with this topic. But before we wrap up, is there anything that you wanted to add, Sammy? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I think we have covered a lot of different things across this episode. And if we were to continue, we probably need a part 2. So I'm going to say thank you so much for having me on and allowing me to share my story. And I hope that if anyone has made it through the whole episode and is listening to this right now, that some parts of my story, if they resonate with you or if you feel like they're relatable in some way, you can see that there is light at the end of the tunnel and you don't need to stay stuck. If you ever need someone to talk to, you can always DM Yalini, you can always DM me. But I believe that as women, we need to support each other. And it's not just your typical like women's empowerment all for show. Like it's genuinely, if you've got something going on, if you feel alone, make sure that you're reaching out and getting that support, because I didn't for years. And I wish I did it sooner, because I look at the impact that it had on all the other areas of my life. And had I just spoken to someone, had I just started doing the inner work on myself earlier, it probably wouldn't have wreaked as much havoc and chaos. But now I've learned these lessons that I'm able to share. So it is a blessing.
Yeah. And on that, it's never too late. I mean, almost all the clients that I work with will turn around and go, why didn't I do this sooner? And it's okay. It's the journey that it takes to get you to the point where you're willing to shift things for yourself. But it's never too late. And so, again, to recap this episode with so many of the things that we've talked about, I want to remind you that falling in love with yourself isn't falling in love with how you look. It isn't about falling in love with how you dress or what you have accomplished. The process of falling in love with yourself is the process of understanding who you are outside of social media, outside of the likes, outside of the followers, because that isn't real in the way that connecting with humans in your day-to-day life is. It's about understanding what your values are, what your quirks are, what are the things that make you you, what makes you fun, what makes you happy, and developing a relationship with that and loving yourself for who you are, not because you look like everybody else, but because of all of your uniqueness that feels good inside of you. Because when you have that powerfully embedded within yourself, you become less likely to be swayed with all the chaos that goes on outside of you, where you don't think you're blonde enough, or you're not tall enough, or you're too young to have accomplished what you're trying to accomplish. Because then you've got that security and that confidence inside of you that gets you moving forward no matter what, because that is what builds resilience in this life. And some of the ways that we've touched on that you can cultivate that process of falling in love with yourself, with understanding and accepting yourself, is through things like journaling, through things like taking a break and a detox from social media, through things like talking to a friend, getting some outside perspective so you are not stuck in your head and the stories that you are constantly going around and criticizing yourself for, through things like writing a forgiveness letter. And it might help to have that little version of you, that little child, as a reference point for knowing that they are the ones that you are healing in this process. It might be things like meditation and sitting with your emotions and understanding that there is no such thing as a good or bad emotion, that you are here to experience it all and it is okay. Because if you can love the good and you can also love the darker parts of you, then you are on your way to feeling whole and realizing that that love that you can cultivate for yourself is not conditional. It's not conditional on your mood. It is not conditional on your current emotion. It is simply being loved for who you are, just like that screaming baby that you may have come in as this world as. Because when you came into this world, you came in worthy of love. And so just like that, you are lovable simply for existing. It is not something you need to earn. It is not a transaction. That is the process of falling in love with yourself. So thank you again, Sammy, for joining me for this session. And I hope that this helps you fall in love with the truest part of you that is so worthy of beautiful things in this world. Thank you.